There you go, there's Adobe loaded up. If I go to my documents, because of folder redirection, what was available on my legacy FAT client is also available on this Windows 7 client. And you'll see file type association is also seamless. I can double click a report, a PDF file, and this should then launch within the Adobe Reader application. If we then go back to Notepad, and then if I change some of the settings, for example, under Preferences, I'm just going to authenticate with our proxy. The other key thing to note here is whenever you log off or shut down one of these virtual Windows 7 clients or any virtual Zen desktop client, if it's in read-only mode, what that means is the next time that user logs on, of course they're going to lose all their personalization because it's all read-only mandatory. However, we've developed the technologies and we've implemented solutions so that we can capture the user personalization. So there's nothing more frustrating than the user customizing their Word and Outlook and then having to redo that every time they log on. That's just not going to work. So what we've done is we've developed new ways and methodologies to ensure that all this is captured and centralized. It's not using roaming profiles because they are very prone to corruption. They're cumbersome. They grow exponentially in size. They cause a lot of headache over the years, as we've all hopefully learned. So we're using different technologies using hybrid profiles, and I can give more information on that at another date. And for now, I'll just show you how that actually works in terms of the user experience. So if I look at the preferences and say I want the toolbar, big icons, and then enable close button on each tab, close that, close down the application, Notepad shuts down. If I start Notepad back up, obviously it's within the same session as you'd expect, it shows it. So in a minute when I log off, I'll log back on and prove to you how it comes back in and it remembers my personalizations. As you can see, that PDF did eventually load up and now it's cached. If I can close down, and if I load Adobe again, hopefully you'll see it launches much more rapidly as it would do, as though it's locally installed. However, if I go back to Program Files, you'll see, refreshing, and back to the 64-bit Program Files area, there is still no Adobe. There is still no Notes++. There is still no putty showing up. It's all completely hidden from the subsystem. You never ever tattoo the underlying operating system. What benefits does this give you? Well, many. One of the main benefits is the fact that you're not tattooing the underlying operating system. So you're not ever going to get any sort of corruption or any non-standardization of your base operating system. These applications also mean that because they're virtualized and in their own separate bubbles, application conflicts basically become a thing of the past. So in the past, we all know that you've had to silo off, or you've had to have very good engineers to create special MSI packages and do a lot of programming techniques to work around difficult applications that perhaps conflicted with other parts of the OS or other applications. Often you may have to silo completely and give them a separate workstation or a terminal server, etc. This now becomes a thing of the past. We can now virtualize our application base and ensure that there is no application conflicts because each bubble does not tattoo the underlying operating system or interact with each other. However, saying that, there are of course instances where you do want them to interact. For example, you have an application which has a prerequisite for JRE, runtime. How do you cope with that? Well, with the latest versions, and it's been around now for about 1.5 years, 2 years, Microsoft has now developed technology where you can basically interact between the bubbles if you so desire. So what we can do is we can create a core JRE bubble, version 1.5 or maybe one that's running 1.0, whatever. And then what we can do within the master app, let's say Outlook, for example, let's say you need JRE for some reason, as part of the Outlook bubble, we can say, look, can you also load in the JRE bubble virtual space? So that's just to show you that the power of this application virtualization. So as you can see, I have my putty loaded here because I'm a developer. I need to do some Unix work. there still is no tattooing on the operating system. And just to re-emphasize that, and just to prove to you that there's no smoke and mirrors here, this really is a read-only image. So if I go to the registry of this workstation and go to local machine and software, and let's say I create a new key here. Okay, so I'm simulating a manual install. So let's say I went to the internet and downloaded some wonderful software, and I wanted to install it as a user, and I had the rights to do so. This is simulating that tattooing. So that would install that software there. So it's under HKey local machine software. So in a minute, once I reboot and log back on, I'll show you that all that will no longer be remembered. It would have disappeared. Same if I take the C drive and maybe go to Program Files, and if I just quickly drag and drop a PDF into here, just to show you more tattooing. The other thing I just want to quickly demonstrate whilst I'm on the virtual platform is the ability to link into not only your virtual applications, but what about your existing terminal server XenApp estate, Citrix farm? That's not a problem either. What we can do is pre-configure your Citrix client to automatically talk to your corresponding Citrix farm, where the user from within the virtual application desktop can also then still launch all the legacy apps that you may be hosting within a Citrix environment. So just to demonstrate that, I have here this online client. Once I've loaded it, it's pre-configured to talk to our XenApp farm. I right-click the icon here, and I have available applications. So let's start Explorer. So within this Windows 7 virtual desktop, I'm now going to launch a XenApp application within that session. So it just shows you the power that not only do I have application virtualization to the FAT client, the virtual client itself, but I can also then run access to any other virtual applications running within the XenApp farms. The other thing I'll point out here is because the advantage of using application virtualization is in the old days with MSIs, you'd have to maybe program and create an MSI for each particular end node, whether it be a FAT client, a laptop build, maybe terminal servers would certainly normally have to have a different MSI created. You start efforts and packages and management, etc. With application virtualization, you can basically create one application which fits all. So we have here Adobe Reader, Mozilla, Notepad++. They're just one virtual app. That virtual app can now be delivered to any end node, whether it's the Windows XP legacy client itself, whether it's the Windows 7 Zen desktop build, or even the XenApp server. So whether it's Windows 2003, 2008 server, it's irrelevant. Another point to point out here, you may not be aware, but there's a lot of cases where you have an application, maybe a legacy Windows application, which can only run on Windows 2000, for example, and you're being forced to still keep Windows 2000 in your estate. A lot of people aren't aware, but by using Microsoft AppV, you can basically run that application virtualized within a XP or Windows 7 or Windows 2008 environment. Even though it's a Windows 2000 app, it will actually technically work in 90% of the cases on projects we've worked on where we've had these cases. So just to note, that can also be a great benefit and a quick win for you. So here you can see I'm on the server. It's a completely different system. I'm seeing the C drive of the actual XenApp server, and I can browse, etc. And it's just using the standard ICA session to the XenApp farm. So I'll close that down, and that will log me off. What I'm now going to do is just log off the session, and before I do so, actually, I'm just going to personalize my desktop because, like most users, I like to feel at home. I'm going to have a bit of nature, I think. So I'm adding here some customization. I'm now going to log off or shut down. When you log off the Zen desktops, you can control what happens, and what by default what it will do is actually shut down that virtual operating system and reboot it in the background. These operating systems are all running within a Zen server virtualized environment, but you can run it on any hypervisor, whether it's ESX or Microsoft. So basically, I've now shut down that virtual operating system's rebooted, and so it's gone back to vanilla. I'm now going to launch another one. It's also important to note you actually have a pool of them available. So in the background, I have around 10